The scream tore through the midnight forest like a blade through silk. Chipo's hands trembled as she watched the ground where Chief Bonda had stood just moments before. Now nothing remained but his golden staff, slowly sinking into the earth as if swallowed by invisible jaws. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her beautiful face twisted in agony as the moonlight painted her skin silver. This was the fourth man. The fourth life consumed by the curse she carried like a disease in her blood. But what the villagers didn't know would cost them everything. 3 months earlier, the village of Mpika had been a place of abundance. The crops grew taller than any elder could remember, the rivers ran thick with fish, and children laughed without knowing hunger. At the center of this prosperity lived Chipo, whose beauty was so profound that travelers would stop mid-journey just to catch a glimpse of her. Her skin was smooth as river stones, her eyes held the depth of ancestral wisdom, yet she was only 20 harvests old. The first suitor arrived on a Tuesday morning when the market was bustling with life. Chief Bonda came from the northern territories, his procession stretching half a mile long. Cattle loaded gold glinted in the sun, and fine cloth rippled in the breeze like colorful rivers. The entire village gathered to watch as he approached Chipo's father's compound. Baba Muzanda stood at the entrance, his face carefully neutral, but his hands shook slightly as he gripped his walking stick. The chief dismounted, his warriors forming a respectful semicircle behind him. "I have come for your daughter," Chief Bonda announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Name your price." "I will pay double." The villagers murmured excitedly. This was the wealthiest offer anyone had ever had. Baba Muzanda opened his mouth to speak, but a soft voice interrupted from behind him. "There is no price, Chief Bonda." Chipo stepped forward, her head respectfully lowered. "Because I cannot accept your offer." The crowd fell silent. Chief Bonda's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Cannot. Or will not." "Cannot," Chipo repeated, and when she lifted her eyes to meet his, Chief Bonda saw something that made him step back, the desperate, haunted sorrow that seemed too heavy for one person to carry. "Please, great chief. Return to your lands. Find a woman worthy of your generosity." "I am not she." "But why?" Chief Bonda pressed, stepping closer. "Are you promised to another?" "I am promised to nothing but suffering," Chipo whispered, so quietly only he could hear. "If you value your life, you will live and never return." Chief Bonda laughed, mistaking her warning for modesty. "I am a chief, daughter of Muzanda. I have faced lions and enemy warriors. What suffering could you possibly bring me?" Chipo's eyes filled with tears. "More than you can imagine." But Chief Bonda was not dissuaded. He left his gifts at her father's door and departed, convinced that time would change her mind. 3 days later, his horse returned without him, its saddle empty, its eyes wide with a terror that made the stable boys weep. The second suitor arrived 2 weeks after Chief Bonda's disappearance. Warrior Tembo was famous throughout 5 territories for his strength. He had killed a leopard with his bare hands at 15, had led successful raids that made his village prosperous, and wore the scars of his victories like medals across his broad chest. He found Chipo at the river, washing clothes with the other women. When she saw him approaching, her hands stilled in the water, her face draining of color. "I have heard of your beauty," Tembo said, kneeling beside her with surprising gentleness for such a large man. "But they did not mention your sadness. Why do you weep, beautiful one?" "I weep for those who come seeking what they should not find," Chipo replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Chief Bonda disappeared, Tembo said carefully. "Some say you cursed him." "I want him," Chipo said, her hands gripping the wet cloth so tightly her knuckles turned white. "As I am warning you now. Leave this place. Forget you ever saw me." Tembo reached out slowly, taking one of her hands in his. The other women scattered, giving them privacy. "I am not afraid," he said. "If you are cursed, I will fight whatever demon holds you." If you are hunted, I will protect you. Be my wife, Chipo. She looked at his hand holding hers, at the strength in his fingers, the calluses from years of wielding weapons. For a moment, just a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like to say yes. To have someone fight for her instead of because of her. Then she pulled her hand away, standing abruptly. You cannot fight what lives in my blood, warrior. You cannot protect me from what I am. Go. Please, I beg you. But the desperation in her voice only intrigued him more. Tembo began to court her with a dedication that moved the village women to tears. Every morning, he brought her fresh fish from the river. Every evening, he sat outside her compound, telling stories that made her smile despite her sorrow. For 2 weeks, Chipo felt something she had never known, the warm beginning of hope. On the night of the full moon, Tembo walked her home from the market. You are smiling more, he observed. Perhaps the curse is breaking. The curse never breaks, Chipo said, her smile fading. It only takes what it is owed. Then let it take me, Tembo said fiercely, stopping to face her. I would rather die having known you than live 100 years without. Don't. Chipo grabbed his arm, her eyes wild. Don't say such things. You don't understand what you're offering. Then help me understand, Tembo pleaded, his warrior's pride melting into vulnerability. Tell me what haunts you. Chipo opened her mouth, trembling with the weight of words she had never spoken. But before she could answer, a distant drum began to beat, the rhythm that called the village to ceremony. Her face went white as moonlight. No, she whispered. Not yet. Not tonight. Chipo, what? Leave me. Now. Run, Tembo, if you ever cared for me at all, run. But Tembo was a warrior, and warriors did not run. He followed her as she fled toward her compound, watched as she barred her door from inside, heard her sobbing through the wooden walls. He waited outside all night, determined to protect her from whatever she feared. When dawn broke, Tembo's spear was found standing upright by the river, its shaft decorated with strange markings that seemed to move in the morning light. His body was never found. The village elders called an emergency meeting. Mainaliomino, the oldest woman in Pika, stood before the gathered crowd, her blind eye somehow still piercing. Something unnatural walks among us, she declared. 2 men have vanished, both after courting Muzanda's daughter. This is not coincidence. This is design. She's a witch, someone shouted from the crowd. She's cursed, another voice added. She's brought evil to our village. Baba Muzanda stood, his face haggard. My daughter is innocent, he said, but his voice lacked conviction, and everyone heard it. Then where are the men? Mainaliomino demanded. Where is Chief Bonda? Where is Warrior Tembo? They came for her hand, and now they are gone like smoke on the wind. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Trust me, what's coming next will shock you to your core. In the shadows of the meeting, a young man named Mwamba listened with growing rage. His brother Chanda had been the third suitor, a merchant who had come to Mpika 6 weeks ago with dreams of winning Chipo's heart. Chanda had been gentle where others were bold, patient where others were demanding. He had courted Chipo with poetry and songs, and for the first time, villagers had seen genuine warmth in her responses. Then, like the others, he had vanished on a full moon night. Mwamba had tracked the forest for days, finding nothing but his brother's merchant bag hanging from a tree branch, swaying in a wind that didn't blow. Inside was a note in Chanda's handwriting, Brother, if you find this, do not follow my path. She is not what she seems. The price is too high. Forget me and leave. But Mwamba was not one to forget. He was a hunter, tracker, then strategist, the kind of man who unraveled mysteries the way other men split firewood. If something had taken his brother, he would find it. If someone was responsible, he would make them answer. And if that someone was Chipo, then beautiful or not, caste or not, she would tell him the truth. He began his investigation carefully. First, he visited the herbalist Bokilufia, an ancient man who lived at the edge of the forest and knew secrets the elders had forgotten. "You seek answers about the girl," Bokilufia said before Mwamba could even speak. The old man didn't look up from grinding herbs in his stone bowl. "How did you? Your brother came to me too, before he disappeared. Asked the same questions. I gave him the same warning I'll give you. Some truths are sharper than spears, young hunter. Some mysteries are better left buried." Mwamba sat down uninvited. "Tell me anyway." Bokilufia sighed, setting down his pestle. "The girl's mother, Namukolo, died the night Chipo was born. It was during an eclipse, the moon swallowing the sun, darkness at noon. Bad omens everywhere. The labor was difficult, too difficult. Namukolo should have died hours before she did, but she held on with a strength that wasn't natural." "What do you mean, not natural?" "I mean she made a bargain, boy. With something that lives in the space between the living and the dead. With Chitapo, the water spirit that dwells in the deepest part of the river." Mwamba felt ice crawl down his spine. "What kind of bargain?" "The kind desperate mothers make when they're dying and want to protect their children. Namukolo offered her life for the village's prosperity, endless harvests, full rivers, healthy children. But such bargains always carry a price. Always. And that price is..." Bokilufia's ancient eyes met Mwamba's. "The daughter. Chipo is the vessel through which the bargain is maintained. She rejects suitors to protect them, but the spirit marks them anyway. On the full moon, their life force feeds Chitapo, keeps the bargain alive, keeps our crops growing and our children healthy. The girl is a living sacrifice who must watch others be sacrificed in her place." Mwamba stood abruptly, his fists clenched. "That's insane. How can the village allow this?" "Most don't know. Those who suspect choose comfort over truth. Full bellies are easier to carry than guilty consciences. Even her father knows only part of it. The spirit binds his tongue whenever he tries to speak the whole truth." "Then I'll make her tell me herself," Mwamba declared, heading for the door. "Wait," Bokilufia called out. "There's one more thing Chanda discovered before he vanished. He found old stories, ancient tales about breaking such curses. They say only mutual sacrifice can shatter a bargain made in desperation, when two people offer their lives freely for each other, with love pure enough to shame the spirits. But boy, no one has ever survived attempting it." Mwamba paused in the doorway. "My brother tried, didn't he?" "I believe so. And now he's gone. Then I'll succeed where he failed." Mwamba began courting Chipo the very next day, but not with wealth or displays of strength. He brought her wildflowers from the high meadows where few ventured. He asked her about her dreams, not her hand in marriage. He listened when she spoke and respected her silences when she didn't. At first, Chipo tried to maintain her distance. She barely looked at him, gave short answers, refused his gifts. But Mwamba was patient in a way the others hadn't been. He didn't demand or plead. He simply showed up, day after day, asking nothing except to be in her presence. One evening, 3 weeks into his quiet courtship, Chipo finally broke. They were sitting under the great baobab tree at the edge of the village, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and blood. Mwamba had been telling her about tracking a wounded antelope through the forest, how he'd followed it for hours not to kill it but to make sure it reached water safely. "Why do you do this?" Chipo interrupted suddenly, her voice sharp with frustration. "Why do you keep coming back?" "Because you're interesting," Mwamba said simply. "And because you're in pain, and I don't like seeing people suffer. You don't even know me. Then let me know you." Chipo laughed bitterly. "You don't want to know me, Mwamba. You don't want to know what I am. You're a woman who carries too much alone, Mwamba said quietly. That's what I see. Tears spilled down Chipo's cheeks before she could stop them. I'm a curse. I'm the reason men die. Chief Bonda, Warrior Tembo, your brother, all of them came for me, and all of them are gone. Don't you understand? I'm poison, Mwamba. Everything I touch withers and dies. You didn't kill them, Mwamba said with certainty. Something else did. Something you're trying to protect people from. Chipo stared at him, her breath catching. How do you know that? Because I've been watching you. Really watching. When suitors approach, you don't look proud or pleased, you look terrified. You want them away, and when they don't listen, you look like someone attending a funeral before the death occurs. That's not the behavior of a killer, Chipo. That's the behavior of a prisoner. The words hung in the air between them. Chipo covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs she'd held back for years. I can't tell you, she whispered through her fingers. Even if I wanted to, I can't. The bargain won't let me speak the full truth to anyone who might try to save me. Then show me, Mwamba said, moving closer. The next full moon is in 3 days. Let me follow you. Let me see what happens. If you do, you'll die, Chipo said flatly, lowering her hands to look at him with red-rimmed eyes. Just like the others. Maybe, Mwamba acknowledged. But at least I'll die knowing the truth. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find a way to stop it. Chipo studied his face for a long moment. She saw no bravado there, no warrior's pride or foolish confidence. Just quiet determination and something else, something that looked dangerously like hope. You're marked now, she finally said, her voice hollow. From the moment you decided to court me, Chitopo noticed you. In 3 days, when the moon is full, the spirit will claim you like it claimed the others. Following me won't change that. It will only let you watch your own death approach. Then I'll watch, Mwamba said. But I won't go quietly into the darkness, Chipo. I promise you that. For the first time since her mother died, Chipo felt something warm flicker in her chest, not quite hope, but perhaps the memory of what hope once felt like. The next 3 days passed like a slowly tightening noose. Chipo grew more withdrawn, her eyes constantly darting to the sky as if checking the moon's progress. Mwamba spent the time preparing, gathering herbs Bokilufia suggested might offer protection, carving protective symbols into his hunting knife, and most importantly, making peace with the possibility of his death. On the 3rd evening, as the sun began its descent, Mwamba found Chipo sitting by the river, staring into the water with an expression of profound resignation. It's tonight, she said without looking at him. Can you feel it? The air is different. Heavier. Mwamba sat beside her. I feel it. You should run, Chipo said, but there was no conviction in her voice. Take a fast horse and ride until morning. Maybe if you're far enough away when the moon rises. I'm not running, Mwamba interrupted gently. I'm staying with you. Chipo turned to him, her eyes desperate. Why? Why won't you save yourself like any sensible person would? Because you've been facing this alone for too long, Mwamba said. Because my brother died trying to help you, and I won't let his death be meaningless. And because, he paused, choosing his words carefully, because in 3 weeks, I've seen more courage in you than I've seen in most warriors in a lifetime. You face this horror every moon cycle, knowing you can't stop it, knowing you'll have to watch more people die because of you. That's not weakness, Chipo. That's strength I can't even comprehend. And strong people shouldn't have to stand alone. Chipo's composure finally shattered. She turned and buried her face against Mwamba's shoulder, sobbing with the accumulated grief of years. He held her, saying nothing, letting her release the pain she'd carried like stones in her heart. When the moon began to rise, Chipo pulled away, wiping her eyes. It's starting, she whispered. I have to go to the grove. Don't follow too closely, Mwamba. Let me have a head start. Maybe the spirits will be merciful if you're not directly beside me. How merciful have they been so far? Mwamba asked, standing and offering her his hand. Chipo looked at his outstretched hand for a moment, then took it. Her fingers were ice cold. Not merciful at all, she admitted. They walked together through the darkening village, past compounds where families gathered around cooking fires, past children playing their last games before bedtime, past the normal world that Chipo could see but never truly belonged to. At the edge of the forest, she stopped. This is where you should turn back, she said. This is where I follow you, Mwamba corrected. Chipo's laugh was bitter and broken. You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the most foolish. Probably both, Mwamba agreed. Now, are you going to show me this grove, or do I have to track you through the forest in the dark? They walked deeper into the forest, following a path that seemed to exist only for Chipo's feet. The trees grew denser, older, their branches interweaving overhead to block out the rising moon. Strange sounds echoed around them, not quite animal, not quite human, but something caught between. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, they emerged into a clearing. Ancient standing stones formed a rough circle, covered in moss that glowed faintly in the moonlight. At the center was a pool of water so still it looked like black glass. This is the sacred grove, Chipo whispered, her voice trembling. This is where my mother made her bargain. This is where I become something else. The full moon broke through the canopy above, bathing the grove in silver light. The moment its rays touched Chipo's skin, she gasped, her body going rigid. It's happening, she managed to say before the transformation began. Mwamba watched in horror and fascination as Chipo's skin began to emit a soft, otherworldly glow. Her eyes rolled back, showing only whites, then shifted to a brilliant gold that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Her hair lifted around her head as if underwater, and her body began to shift, not dramatically, but subtly, as if she was becoming less solid, more spirit than flesh. She opened her mouth and released a sound that was part scream, part song, a keening wail that made Mwamba's bones ache with sympathetic pain. Then the water in the central pool began to churn. Something was rising from its depths. First, ripples disturbed the mirror-smooth surface. Then bubbles. Then a shape, humanoid but wrong, began to emerge. It was beautiful in the way a lightning strike is beautiful, terrible and awe-inspiring and absolutely deadly. Chipo, the water spirit, stood before them. The spirit was tall, impossibly tall, with skin that seemed to be made of flowing water constantly reshaping itself. Its eyes were pools of absolute darkness, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like rivers over stones, like rain on leaves, like drowning. Daughter, it said, addressing Chipo. The moon is full. The bargain demands payment. Please, Chipo whispered, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. Not again. Not him too. The bargain was made, Chipo replied, its voice devoid of emotion. Your mother traded her life and your freedom for the village's prosperity. Every full moon, a marked suitor feeds the agreement. Their life force sustains the crops, fills the rivers, keeps the children healthy. You know this. You have always known this. I never agreed to this. Chipo shouted, her voice breaking. I was a baby. I had no choice. Your mother had no choice either, Chipo said. She was dying, and her love for you and her village drove her to desperation. Such is the nature of all great bargains, they are made in moments of impossible need. From the pool behind Chipo, ghostly figures began to emerge. Mwamba recognized them immediately, Chief Bonda, his regal bearing now translucent and hollow. Warrior Tembo, his mighty form reduced to a pale shadow. And there, among them, was Chanda, Mwamba's beloved brother, his gentle face twisted in eternal anguish. Brother, Mwamba breathed, stepping forward. Chanda's spirit turned toward him, mouthing words that produced no sound. But Mwamba could read his lips. Run. Save yourself. It's too late for me. No, Mwamba said firmly. He turned to face Chipo directly. I've had enough. I understand the bargain now. And I'm here to make a new one. The spirit's dark eyes fixed on him with sudden interest. Oh. And what could a mortal hunter possibly offer that would interest me? My life, Mwamba said clearly. Willingly given, freely offered. Take it now, but release all the others. Release Chipo from her curse. Release the trapped souls. Let the village find prosperity through their own hands and hard work, not through borrowed power bought with blood. Chipo laughed, and the sound was like waterfalls crashing on rocks. Why would you sacrifice yourself for those already lost? Why doom yourself for a woman you've known mere weeks? Because she's suffered enough, Mwamba said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Because these men deserve peace, not eternal torment. Because love means nothing if it chains another person to misery. My life for their freedom, that's my offer. No. Chipo surged forward, her spirit form crackling with energy. I won't let you. I won't watch another person die because of me. She turned to Chipo, her golden eyes blazing. Take me instead. End this now. Release everyone, the trapped souls, the village, all of it. Let me pay the price my mother couldn't. Let me finally end this nightmare. The spirit looked between them with something that might have been curiosity. How interesting. The marked suitor offers himself for the cursed vessel. The cursed vessel offers herself for the marked suitor. True sacrifice offered in both directions. What does that mean? Mwamba demanded. It means, Chipo said slowly, that you have presented me with something I have not encountered in 500 years. Mutual sacrifice. Selfless love offered without expectation of return. Two souls willing to die for each other, with no thought of personal gain. The spirit moved closer to them, its watery form shifting and rippling. Your mother's bargain was made in desperation and fear, child. It was selfish at its core. She wanted to save you and the village, yes, but she also wanted to escape her own death. Such bargains are easy to maintain because they feed on that same selfishness in others. Men came for you seeking beauty, status, the pride of winning what others could not. Even their deaths were tinged with ego. Chipo gestured to Mwamba. But this one came seeking truth. He risked himself for knowledge, for justice for his brother, for your freedom. There is no ego in that. No selfishness. Then the spirit turned to Chipo. And you, who have lived your entire life as a prisoner of your mother's choice, offer to embrace death not to escape suffering but to free others from it. You would sacrifice yourself for people who called you a witch, who feared and shunned you. The grove began to glow brighter, the standing stones humming with ancient power. Such purity of sacrifice has power, Chipo continued. Power that can break even the strongest bargains. But there is a price for breaking what your mother built. If you both truly mean what you offer, if you are willing to give your lives freely for each other with no guarantee of survival, then step forward together. Hold hands. And accept whatever fate the old magic decides. Mwamba turned to Chipo. Her spirit form was fading slightly, her human features becoming more visible again. She looked terrified but determined. We don't have to do this, she said quietly. You could still run. Live your life. I've made peace with my fate. I haven't made peace with it, Mwamba replied, extending his hand. And I meant what I said. Strong people shouldn't stand alone. Chipo looked at his hand, calloused from years of hunting, scarred from a dozen close calls, but steady and open and offering her a choice she'd never had before. She took it. Their fingers intertwined, and immediately the grove erupted in blinding light. The standing stones began to crack, ancient symbols blazing to life across their surfaces. The pool of water churned violently, and the ghostly figures of the trapped suitors began to glow with the same intense brilliance. Chipo threw back its head and released a sound that was part scream, part song, part the breaking of chains that had held for 20 years. The spirit's form began to fracture, pieces of it turning to mist and streaming away on a wind that didn't exist. The bargain is broken, Chipo's voice echoed, growing fainter. Mutual sacrifice, pure love, the old magic, acknowledges, releases. Mwamba felt his life force being pulled from his body, saw the same thing happening to Chipo. They both gasped, their grip on each other tightening even as their strength failed. The world began to fade, darkness creeping in from the edges of vision. The last thing Mwamba saw before consciousness left him was the trapped souls rising from the pool, their forms solidifying, becoming real again. Chief Bonda, Warrior Tembo, Chanda, all of them taking solid form, gasping their first real breaths in months or years. Then, nothing but darkness. When Mwamba woke, the sun was streaming through the trees. He was lying on soft grass in the grove, which looked different in daylight, less ominous, almost peaceful. The standing stones were still cracked, but the moss on them was ordinary green, no longer glowing. And beside him, still holding his hand, was Chipo. She was breathing. Her skin was normal, no glow, no shifting between spirit and flesh. Her eyes, when they fluttered open, were simply brown, deep and warm and entirely human. "We are alive," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. "We are alive," Mwamba confirmed, sitting up slowly. His body ached like he'd been in a fight with a buffalo, but he was definitely, undeniably alive. Around them, the other men were staring. Chief Bonda sat up fast, looking around in confusion. What happened? "The last thing I remember is the ground opening beneath me and then darkness and water and an endless dream." Warrior Tembo was next, his warrior's instincts bringing him to his feet quickly despite obvious disorientation. "How long have we been gone?" "Months," Mwamba said. "For some of you, nearly a year." Chanda was the last to wake, and when he saw Mwamba, tears immediately filled his eyes. The brothers embraced fiercely, both of them shaking with relief. "You broke it," Chanda whispered. "The curse. I felt it shatter. Felt myself being pulled back from wherever I was." "Brother, how?" "With help," Mwamba said, looking at Chipo, who was standing now, testing her body as if learning to inhabit it for the first time. They made their way back to the village slowly, supporting each other, still trying to process what had happened. The sun was high by the time they emerged from the forest, and the first person to see them was Mainaliomino, whose blind eye somehow still seemed to see everything. She touched each of the returned men, her ancient hands trembling. "The dead walk again," she whispered. "The spirits have released them." "What magic is this?" "Not magic," Chipo said quietly. "Justice. And the end of a bargain that should never have been made." The village erupted in celebration and confusion. Families wept over returned loved ones. Questions flew like startled birds. Through it all, Baba Muzanda stood frozen, staring at his daughter with tears streaming down his face. "Papa," Chipo said, approaching him slowly. "I could never tell you," he burst out, his voice breaking. "The spirit bound my tongue. Every time I tried to explain, to warn you, the words would turn to dust in my mouth. I've watched you suffer for 20 years, knowing the truth but unable to speak it. Can you ever forgive me?" Chipo embraced him, and for the first time in her memory, felt no barrier between them, no curse standing between her and the simple act of being held by her father. "There's nothing to forgive, Papa. You were trapped too. We all were. But it's over now." Over the following weeks, the village began to change. At first, the crops started to struggle, the supernatural abundance fading as the bargain's power dissolved. Some villagers grumbled, missing the effortless prosperity they'd enjoyed. But others, led by Mwamba and the returned men who understood the true cost of that prosperity, began teaching new farming techniques. They dug better irrigation channels, rotated crops, worked harder than they ever had before. The prosperity that came was slower, harder but it was theirs. Built on sweat and cooperation, not blood and spirit bargains. Chipo and Mwamba did not rush into marriage. Chipo needed time to discover who she was beyond the curse, to learn what it meant to make choices without the weight of death hanging over every decision. Mwamba gave her that time, supporting her journey while pursuing his own healing from the trauma of nearly dying and watching his brother disappear. They built a friendship first, based on the foundation of what they'd survived together. They learned each other's quirks and habits, argued about small things and laughed about smaller ones. They discovered that love built slowly, with intention and choice, was stronger than any forged in desperate circumstances. A year after the curse broke, Chipo stood teaching a group of young girls how to tend a vegetable garden. Her hands were dirty, her face sun-warmed, her smile genuine. She looked up to see Mwamba returning from a hunt, and the warmth in her chest had nothing to do with spirits or bargains or ancient magic. It was simply love. Freely chosen. Freely given. That evening, as they sat under the baobab tree watching the sunset, Mwamba took her hand, not in a desperate grasp against death, but in the simple pleasure of connection. "I've been thinking," he said. About marriage. About building a life together. About whether you're ready for that, or if you need more time." Chipo considered the question seriously, as she did all things now that choice had been returned to her. "I think," she said slowly, "that I'm ready to choose. Not because I have to, not because spirits demand it, not because the village expects it. But because I want to. Because choosing you, every day, sounds like the kind of freedom I never thought I'd have." Mwamba smiled, and in that smile was everything they'd survived and everything they would build. "Then let's choose it together." But as the moon rose that night, full and bright and no longer threatening, neither of them noticed the slight ripple in the distant river. Neither saw the way the water seemed to watch them, patient and waiting. In the deepest part of the river, where sunlight never reached, something ancient stirred. Chipo had been bound by the breaking of the bargain, forced to release its hold on the village and the caste bloodline. But spirits are patient. Spirits remember. And bargains, once made, leave marks that never fully fade. The water spirit sank deeper into the darkness, its voice a whisper only the river could hear. "You broke one bargain, children of sacrifice. But every breaking leaves cracks. And through cracks, new agreements can seep. I am patient. I will wait. And when your children's children stand by this river, when they are desperate enough, afraid enough, when they need something only spirits can provide, I will be here. Waiting. Listening. Ready to make a new bargain. Because humans never learn. They never truly learn." The river flowed on, dark and deep and full of secrets. If this story gave you chills, make sure you like this video and drop a comment telling me what African folktale you want to hear next. Subscribe so you never miss these dark tales that reveal the hidden truths of our ancestors. And remember, some bargains echo through generations, waiting for the desperate and the hopeful to call them back to life. The curse may be broken, but is Chipo truly gone? Or is something far more sinister waiting beneath the surface?